She was born an Omega, silenced, overlooked, and publicly rejected by the man fate claimed was hers. But on the night the harvest moon turned crimson, she sang a song older than the world. And something ancient answered. This is a story of power reclaimed, destiny rewritten, and a queen who rose from ashes. Before we begin, if you love dark lichen kings, forbidden mates, and stories that make your heart ache, like, comment, and subscribe for epic Lichen King romances, where omegas rise, kings fall, and love is never gentle. Seraphina Night Whisper learned early how to disappear while standing in plain sight. She kept her eyes lowered, her shoulders rounded, her voice, when she dared use it at all, no louder than the wind through dying leaves. The pack said she was weak, said her wolf was defective. Said she should be grateful they allowed her to remain. So she learned to be small. On nights when the others gathered around roaring fires and laughter, Seraphina scrubbed blood from the training grounds. When pups were born, she stood at the edges of celebration, unseen and uninvited. Even her name was spoken like an inconvenience. Night Whisper. A fitting name, they thought. They did not know the moon listened. The Crescent Ridge Pack had rules that everyone understood without speaking. Alphas commanded, betas enforced, omegas served, and defective omegas like Seraphina existed only on borrowed time. She had no memories of her parents. The pack elders said they'd abandoned her at the border when her wolf failed to manifest properly. Some whispered her mother had been a rogue, desperate and half-mad. Others claimed she was cursed from birth, marked by the moon's displeasure. Seraphina believed none of it, and all of it. It didn't matter. The result was the same. She was alone. Alpha Marius Ironclaw ruled Crescent Ridge with an iron fist wrapped in tradition. He was ancient by wolf standards, his muzzle grayed, his eyes sharp as winter frost. He believed in the old ways, the hierarchies that kept order, the punishments that taught lessons, the silence that protected secrets. Under his rule, weakness was not tolerated. It was eradicated. Seraphina had watched 3 omegas cast out in her lifetime. One for stealing food, one for speaking back to a beta, one for simply existing in a way that displeased the Luna. She learned from their mistakes. The pack house sprawled across the valley like a sleeping beast, stone and timber. Smoke rising from a dozen chimneys, the scent of cooking meat and territorial markers thick in the air. Seraphina's quarters were in the basement, a narrow room with a single window that overlooked the garbage area. She didn't complain. Complaints led to attention. Attention led to punishment. Punishment led to exile. Or worse. If Seraphina was invisible, Thessaly Goldmane was blinding. The Alpha's daughter moved through the pack like sunlight itself, golden hair cascading down her back, amber eyes bright with confidence, her laugh like bells that everyone wanted to hear. She was beautiful, powerful, and untouchable. She was also cruel in ways that never left marks. Thessaly had mastered the art of humiliation disguised as concern. She would ask Seraphina loudly if she'd eaten, and knowing full well omegas ate only after everyone else finished. She would offer Seraphina her old dresses, garments so worn and stained they were barely functional, and smile sweetly as if bestowing charity. And Seraphina would thank her, because that was the game. But the worst part wasn't Thessaly's cruelty. It was her proximity to Aldrich Stormclaw. Aldrich was the pack's rising star, Beta Cormac's son, destined for greatness, already commanding respect despite his youth. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair and eyes like storm clouds. When he walked into a room, people noticed. When he looked at Thessaly, the entire pack smiled knowingly. They would make a perfect pair. Everyone said so. Everyone except the bond that sang in Seraphina's chest whenever Aldrich came near. Serafina first felt it on her 18th birthday. She'd been carrying firewood to the kitchens when Aldrich passed her in the corridor. For one impossible moment, the world stopped. Her wolf, the defective, silent thing that barely stirred, suddenly howled inside her chest. Mate. The word blazed through her mind like wildfire. Aldrich had paused mid-step. His head turned slightly, nostrils flaring as if catching an unfamiliar scent. His eyes met hers for exactly 2 seconds. Then he'd frowned and walked away. Serafina dropped the firewood. Her hands shook so violently she could barely gather the scattered logs. The bond thrummed beneath her skin, insistent and agonizing. Mate, mate, mate. But Aldrich never looked back. In the weeks that followed, Serafina learned to recognize the bond's pull. It twisted in her gut when Aldrich entered a room. It ached when he laughed with Thessaly. It screamed when he touched the golden-haired Alpha's daughter, casual and comfortable, as if they'd already decided their future. Serafina said nothing. What could she say? An Omega claiming an Alpha bond was madness. A defective Omega claiming the future Beta was suicide. So she swallowed the pain and continued scrubbing floors. The harvest moon came once a year, when the veil between worlds grew thin and the moon hung full and heavy in the autumn sky. It was a sacred time for wolves, a night when bonds were recognized, mates were claimed, and the pack renewed its connection to the moon goddess. Alpha Marius announced the ceremony 3 weeks in advance. All unmated wolves of age would present themselves before the pack. Bonds would be acknowledged. Fates would be sealed. The pack house buzzed with excitement. The young wolves preened and postured, hoping to catch someone's eye. Elders spoke in hushed tones about auspicious matches. The kitchen staff worked overtime preparing the feast. And Thessaly Goldmane smiled like a cat with cream. She knew what everyone knew. The harvest moon would formalize what fate had already decided. She and Aldrich would be announced as mates, blessed by the goddess, sealed before the pack. Serafina tried not to think about it. She focused on her work, polishing silverware, scrubbing floors, preparing guest quarters for visiting alphas. She kept her head down and her mouth shut. But at night, alone in her basement room, the bond pulsed in her chest like a second heartbeat. Wrong, her wolf whispered. This is wrong. Serafina pressed her hands to her ribs and tried to breathe through the ache. 3 weeks became 2, and 2 became 1. And the moon grew fuller each night, watching. The whispers started small. Did you hear Serafina might present herself? Can defective Omegas even have mates? Imagine if she tried to claim someone. The embarrassment. Serafina heard them all. The pack house had thin walls and cruel tongues. Thessaly's friends were the worst. They would pass Serafina in the corridors and giggle behind their hands, making loud comments about desperate Omegas and impossible dreams. One afternoon, Thessaly herself cornered Serafina in the laundry room. You're not actually planning to attend the ceremony, are you? Thessaly's voice was honey-sweet, her eyes sharp. I mean, it's for wolves who have something to offer. You understand. Serafina kept folding linens, hands steady despite the trembling in her chest. I understand. Unmiss. Thessaly stepped closer. Good, because it would be awkward. For everyone. If you made some kind of scene. The bond flared, hot and furious. Serafina's wolf snarled silently. I wouldn't dream of causing trouble, Serafina said quietly. Thessaly studied her for a long moment, then smiled. Of course not. You're too smart for that. She left in a swirl of perfume and certainty. Serafina's hands clenched in the clean fabric. The bond burned. Her wolf clawed at her ribs. She had 2 choices. Attend the ceremony and risk everything, or stay silent and watch her mate claim another. Neither felt survivable. The night of the harvest moon arrived cold and clear. The pack gathered in the ceremonial clearing, a natural amphitheater ringed by ancient oaks, the ground trampled smooth by generations of paws and bare feet. The torches blazed in iron brackets. The feast tables groaned under the weight of roasted meat and fresh bread. And above it all, the moon rose enormous in amber, watching. Serafina stood at the very edge of the crowd, wrapped in a cloak too thin for the weather. She'd debated not coming at all. But something, her wolf, the bond, sheer stubborn need to witness the truth, had pulled her from her room. She would watch. That was all. Just watch. Alpha Marius stood at the center of the clearing, his voice carrying across the assembly. Tonight we honor the old ways. Tonight we recognize what the goddess has written. Let those who feel the pull of fate step forward. One by one, young wolves emerged from the crowd. Hands clasped, eyes met. Bonds recognized and celebrated. The pack cheered each pairing. Serafina's chest tightened with each announcement. The bond thrummed steadily, pulling her attention toward where Aldrich stood near the front, tall and composed, Thessaly at his side. They looked perfect together. Everyone thought so. "Aldrich Stormclaw," Alpha Marius called. "Step forward." The crowd hushed. This was the moment they'd been waiting for. Aldrich moved to the center with the confidence of someone who'd never questioned his place in the world. Thessaly followed, radiant in a dress the color of sunset. The bond in Serafina's chest screamed. Aldrich opened his mouth to speak the words that would seal everything. And then he stopped. His head turned, his nostrils flared, his entire body went rigid. The bond pulled. Across 50 feet of packed earth and bodies, across hierarchies and expectations and every rule that said this was impossible. Across all of it, Aldrich's eyes found Serafina's. The world held its breath. Serafina felt her wolf rise for the first time in her life, truly rise. Power flooding through her veins like molten silver. The bond blazed between them, visible to anyone with eyes to see. Mate. Thessaly's smile faltered. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Alpha Marius frowned. Aldrich's expression shifted through shock, confusion, and something that might have been recognition. For one impossible moment, Serafina thought, "No." Aldrich's voice cut through the night. He turned away from her deliberately, every line of his body rejecting what he'd just felt. "I, Aldrich Stormclaw, son of Cormac, beta of Crescent Ridge Pack." His voice rang clear and cold. Sokat reject the bond fate has mistakenly placed upon Serafina Night Whisper. Silence fell like a blade. "She is not my mate. She will never be my mate. I choose Thessaly Goldmane as the goddess clearly intended." Pain exploded through Serafina's chest. Not metaphorical pain. Real physical agony, as if someone had reached into her ribcage and torn her heart in half. She gasped, knees buckling. The world spun. The bond that had burned so bright shattered like glass, each shard embedding itself deeper into her soul. Around her, the pack reacted with a mixture of shock and satisfaction. Some gasped. Others nodded as if this confirmed what they'd always known. A few even laughed quietly. Defective Omega. Of course, fate would make a mistake with her. Thessaly's smile returned, triumphant and relieved. Alpha Marius cleared his throat. "Oh, so witnessed. Aldrich Stormclaw has spoken his choice." "And I accept," Thessaly declared, her voice ringing across the clearing. She took Aldrich's hand possessively. The pack began to cheer. Serafina couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but feel the bond dying inside her, each severed thread another cut she'd never recover from. She stumbled backward, trying to escape, but the crowd pressed in, faces blurring, voices rising, the weight of their judgment crushing her. Move. She had to move. Her feet finally obeyed. She turned and ran. Behind her, the ceremony continued. Aldrich and Thessaly accepted the pack's blessing. The feast began. Music rose into the night, and above it all, something impossible happened. The harvest moon turned red. Blood red. Not the warm amber of a harvest moon, or the pale silver of winter. Red like fresh wounds, red like broken oaths. The pack fell silent, staring upward in confusion and dawning fear. Elder Moira, the pack's oldest wolf, stood slowly. Her face had gone ash pale. "The goddess weeps," she whispered. Alpha Marius snarled. "Nonsense. It's a natural phenomenon. Continue the ceremony." But his voice lacked conviction. Every wolf could feel it. The sudden chill in the air, the way the firelight seemed to dim, the wrongness that settled over the clearing like a shroud. Serafina didn't see any of it. She was already deep in the forest, running on legs that barely held her weight, lungs burning, vision blurred with tears and pain. The bond's death throes pulsed through her in waves. Each step felt like tearing open a new wound. Her wolf howled silently, a sound of pure anguish. She ran until her legs gave out. She collapsed at the base of an ancient oak, its roots twisted and thick, its branches reaching toward that impossible red moon. Serafina curled into herself and finally allowed herself to break. She had nothing left. No pack, no mate, no purpose, just pain. And in that moment of absolute despair, something stirred inside her. Not her wolf, something older, deeper, a memory written in her blood that predated words. Her mouth opened, and she began to sing. The song had no words. It poured from Serafina's throat like liquid moonlight. Pure sound, pure emotion, pure pain, transformed into something the world had not heard in centuries. She didn't know she was singing, didn't understand what was happening. She only knew she couldn't hold it inside anymore. The melody spiraled upward, wild and haunting, each note carrying the weight of every rejection, every humiliation, every moment she'd been told she was less than nothing. The forest responded. Leaves stirred, though there was no wind. Nocturnal creatures fell silent, listening. The ancient oak above her began to weep. Actual tears of silver sap that dripped onto the roots and soaked into the earth. The song grew louder, stronger, each verse pulling power from somewhere deep within her. A well she'd never known existed, tapped now by sheer necessity. 3 territories away, an Alpha King stopped mid-sentence. His advisors continued talking, but Zephyr Shadowworn heard nothing. His entire being focused on a sound that shouldn't exist, couldn't exist, hadn't existed in over 300 years. A moon singer. "Sire?" one of his betas ventured. "Are you—" Zephyr rose from his throne, on his massive frame suddenly tense. "Prepare my guard. We ride north." "My lord, the council meeting is over." Zephyr's eyes had gone pure silver. "She's calling." Serafina didn't know how long she sang. Time meant nothing. The world condensed to this moment. Her voice, the moon, the pain becoming power, becoming sound. Images flashed through her mind, memories that weren't hers. Women singing beneath full moons. Wolves bowing before voices that commanded reality itself. A language older than packs, older than hierarchies, older than alphas. The first language. The language the moon goddess herself had spoken when she created wolves, giving certain bloodlines the ability to reshape the world through song. Moon singers. The knowledge bloomed in Serafina's consciousness like a flower opening. She understood, suddenly and completely, what she was, what she'd always been. Not defective, never defective, dormant. Her wolf hadn't been broken. It had been waiting for pain great enough to crack open the shell that had kept her power contained. Waiting for the moment when she'd need it most. The bond's destruction had been the key. Agony had unlocked what contentment never could. Seraphina's song shifted. No longer just pain, but recognition, acceptance, and rage. Years of submission burned away. The small, frightened Omega who'd scrubbed floors and kept her eyes lowered disappeared. Someone new was being born. The ancient oak's silver tears were pooling now, forming a perfect circle around Seraphina. Where the sap touched earth, flowers bloomed, night-blooming jasmine and moon lilies, their white petals glowing faintly. The air grew thick with the scent of transformation, that peculiar perfume that accompanied all profound magic. Seraphina finally fell silent, her voice hoarse, her body trembling. The forest remained hushed, waiting. She looked down at her hands and gasped. Silver light emanated from her palms, pulsing in time with her heartbeat. Her skin seemed to shimmer, and when she moved, after-images of moonlight trailed behind her fingers. "What?" she whispered. The oak creaked, its ancient voice rasping. "You remembered." Seraphina's head snapped up. The tree shouldn't be able to speak. Trees didn't speak, except to moon singers. 300 years, the oak continued, its voice like wind through branches. 300 years since one of your kind awakened. We thought the bloodline lost. I don't understand. Seraphina's voice shook. You will. The silver tears at her feet began to glow brighter. The circle of flowers pulsed with light. And in the distance, Seraphina heard something new. Hoofbeats. Thunder rolling across the earth. Someone was coming. Zephyr Shadowworn rode like the world was ending. His elite guard struggled to keep pace. 12 of the strongest wolves in the Northern Territories, and their king was leaving them behind. He couldn't stop. Wouldn't stop. The song pulled at something primal in his chest, a recognition that transcended logic. His wolf howled with joy and desperation. Finally, after so long. Zephyr had been searching for 300 years. Since the night his mother, the last known moonsinger, had died defending their territory from an enemy that sought to extinguish her bloodline. She'd used the last of her power to save her people, got her voice literally holding back an army while her pack escaped. Zephyr had been 17. He'd held her as her voice finally gave out, watched the light fade from her eyes, felt the world grow darker without her song. She'd whispered final words. The bloodline endures. Listen for the song. He'd listened for centuries. Through wars and peace, through the rise and fall of alphas, through the slow degradation of the old ways. He'd built his kingdom on the belief that somewhere, somehow, another moonsinger would awaken. Most thought him mad. Others humored their ancient king's obsession. None truly believed. Until tonight, the song had torn through his consciousness like lightning, unmistakable and undeniable. A moonsinger, awakening in pain and power. Zephyr urged his massive black stallion faster. Hold on, he thought desperately. And whatever you're facing, hold on, I'm coming. Back at Crescent Ridge, the celebration had died. The blood-red moon hung above them like an accusation. The pack huddled together, uneasy and confused. Even Alpha Marius looked unsettled. It's just a lunar eclipse, he insisted. Rare, but natural. Continue the feast. But no one moved. Elder Moira stood in the center of the clearing, her aged eyes closed, her head tilted as if listening to something far away. When her eyes opened, they were filled with tears. You've done it now, she said softly. You've broken something sacred. What are you talking about, old woman? Alpha Marius snapped. The rejected mate. Moira's voice grew stronger. She wasn't defective. She was dormant, and you've awakened her. Aldrich went very still. Beside him, Thessaly's triumphant smile faltered. That's impossible, Thessaly said. She's just an omega, a weak, worthless. The ground trembled. Not an earthquake. Something else. A pulse of power that rippled outward from the forest, centered on a point 2 miles north. Every wolf in the clearing felt it, the unmistakable signature of something ancient stirring. Elder Moira began to laugh, high and wild. The goddess doesn't make mistakes, Alpha. We do, and tonight, we made the worst mistake this pack has ever seen. The red moon pulsed brighter, and in the distance, Seraphina's song began again. Seraphina sensed him before she saw him. Power approaching, vast and ancient, like a storm rolling across open plains. She tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't hold her weight. The singing had drained something essential. She slumped against the oak, and silver light still emanating from her palms, flowers still blooming in impossible profusion around her. The hoofbeats grew deafening. Then he was there. A man stepped into the clearing, and Seraphina's breath caught. He was enormous. Not just tall, but carrying the kind of presence that made the space around him feel smaller. Dark hair touched with silver at the temples, eyes that glowed pure moonlight. Features carved from stone and shadow, beautiful and terrible at once. He wasn't just an alpha. He was something more. The man, the king, her instincts whispered, stopped at the edge of the silver circle. His eyes widened as he took in the scene. The weeping oak, the midnight flowers, Seraphina herself, glowing with power she didn't understand. Blessed goddess, he breathed. It's true. His guard arrived behind him, and 12 wolves shifting nervously at the perimeter. But the king had eyes only for Seraphina. Slowly, carefully, he knelt, an alpha king. Kneeling. Forgive my intrusion, Moonsinger. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. I am Zephyr Shadowworn, king of the Northern Territories. I've been waiting 300 years to hear your voice. Seraphina stared at him, silver tears tracking down her face. I don't understand any of this. Zephyr's expression softened with something like wonder and grief combined. I know, but you will. I'll teach you everything. He extended his hand, palm up, offering. If you'll allow me. Seraphina looked at the offered hand. Every instinct she'd developed over 18 years screamed at her to refuse. Alphas didn't help Omegas. They used them, controlled them, discarded them. But this wasn't an alpha. This was a king who'd knelt before her. Trembling, she placed her silver glowing palm in his. The moment their skin touched, the world exploded into light. Power surged between them, recognizing and completing some ancient circuit. Seraphina gasped as images flooded her mind. A woman with silver hair singing armies into submission. Wolves bowing before voices that could reshape reality. A bloodline stretching back to the moon goddess herself. And there, woven through it all, a name. Not the one the world knew him by. His true name. The one given in the first language. Seraphina's eyes flew open, meeting Zephyr's shocked gaze. Shadowborn at moonrise, she whispered in that ancient tongue. Zephyr's face transformed. Joy and disbelief and something deeper flickered across his features. You heard it. His voice cracked. You sang my true name. How did I? Because you're a moonsinger. Zephyr's hand tightened gently around hers. You speak the first language. You hear what others cannot. You command what others dare not. He pulled her carefully to her feet. Seraphina swayed, but he steadied her, his strength absolute. Your pack rejected you. It wasn't a question. Seraphina's throat closed. She nodded. Zephyr's eyes flashed dangerous silver. Then they're fools, and they've just given me the greatest gift 3 centuries could offer. He turned to his guard. Send word to Crescent Ridge. Their Omega is under my protection now. Any who challenge this will answer to me personally. Zephyr's guard dispersed to establish a perimeter and send messages. The Alpha King himself remained, studying Seraphina with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable, but somehow wasn't. Sit, he said gently, gesturing to a fallen log near the oak. Before you collapse. Seraphina sank gratefully onto the moss-covered wood. The silver glow from her hands was fading, but slowly. Zephyr settled across from her, close enough to catch her if she fell, but far enough to not crowd. What do you know about moon singers? He asked. Nothing. I didn't know they existed until 20 minutes ago. A sad smile touched his lips. The old knowledge has been lost, deliberately suppressed in some cases. Why? Because moon singers threatened the hierarchy. Zephyr's voice grew hard. They were predominantly Omega-born, you see, and they wielded power that surpassed even the strongest Alpha. Seraphina's eyes widened. That's impossible. Is it? You've been taught that Omegas are weak, subservient, less than. But those are pack laws, Seraphina, not natural laws. He leaned forward. Moon singers were the goddess's first children. They could speak in the first language, the tongue of creation itself. When a moon singer commanded in that language, reality had no choice but to obey. The implications crashed over Seraphina. But if Omegas could have that power, the entire pack structure falls apart, Zephyr finished. Alphas rule through physical dominance and territorial instinct. But a moon singer could tell an alpha to kneel, and he would have no choice but to obey. So moon singers became threats. Hunted, killed. Their bloodlines deliberately disrupted. Your mother, Seraphina whispered, remembering what he'd said. Pain flickered across Zephyr's face. My mother was the last. Or so I thought. She died defending our people from those who feared what she represented. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be prepared. His eyes met hers, silver and serious. Your awakening won't go unnoticed. There are still those who believe moon singers should remain extinct. How do I control it? Seraphina's voice shook. The power, the singing. I don't even know how I did it. You did it through pain, Zephyr said quietly. Through necessity. But that's not sustainable. He stood and extended his hand again. Stand. Let me teach you the first lesson. Seraphina took his hand, rising on unsteady legs. The silver circle of flowers and sap still glowed faintly around them. Close your eyes, Zephyr instructed. Feel the power inside you. Don't fight it. Don't fear it. Just acknowledge it. Seraphina obeyed. With her eyes closed, she could sense it clearly. A wellspring of silver light coiled in her chest where the broken mate bond had been. It pulsed with potential. Now, speak your own name, your true name in the first language. I don't know it. Yes, you do. It's written in your blood. Listen. Seraphina listened. Deeper than thought, deeper than memory, she heard it. A name that was hers and had always been hers, waiting for her to claim it. Her mouth opened. Silver heart that sings in darkness. Power exploded outward. The silver circle expanded. Flowers bloomed in waves, spreading across the clearing. The ancient oak's branches lifted, stretching toward the red moon as if in worship, and Seraphina felt it. The full weight of what she was, who she was, what she could become. Not an omega, not defective, a moon singer. When her eyes opened, they glowed pure silver. Beautiful, Zephyr murmured. Now command something small, a leaf, a stone. Seraphina looked around, spotting a small rock near her foot. She focused on it, feeling the words rise unbidden in the first language. Rise. The stone lifted, not thrown, not pushed. It simply rose into the air, hovering at eye level, obeying her voice. Seraphina gasped. The stone dropped. Again, Zephyr encouraged. With confidence. She tried again. Rise. The stone obeyed immediately this time, more controlled. Spin. It spun. Return to earth. It settled gently onto the ground. Seraphina turned to Zephyr, breathless and amazed. I can command anything? In the first language? Yes, within limits. Commanding a stone is trivial. Commanding a wolf. Zephyr's expression grew serious. That requires more power, and comes with consequences. What kind of consequences? The kind that make others fear you. The kind that start wars. He moved closer. Which is why you need training, protection, a safe place to learn what you are. And you're offering that? I'm offering everything I have, Zephyr said simply. My kingdom, my resources, my knowledge, my protection. His eyes held hers. If you'll accept it. Seraphina thought of Crescent Ridge, of Aldrich's rejection, of Thessaly's cruel smile, of years spent invisible and voiceless. That Omega was dead. A new one was being born. I accept, she whispered. The red moon pulsed brighter as if in approval. Before we leave, Zephyr said, you should know what happens next. Next? Your wolf. His gaze traveled over her, assessing. She's been dormant your entire life because she was waiting. Now that your power has awakened, she'll want to emerge fully. Seraphina's heart raced. I've never shifted. The pack said I was defective, unable to. They were wrong. You were never supposed to shift like they do. Moonsinger wolves are different. A pulse of heat spread through Seraphina's chest. Her wolf was rising, and it felt nothing like the weak, broken thing she'd always sensed. This felt like power incarnate. It's happening, she gasped. I can feel. Don't fight it, let her come. The shift began, but it was nothing like what Seraphina had witnessed hundreds of times. No painful bone breaking, no violent transformation. Her body dissolved into moonlight, pure silver radiance that reformed into something magnificent. When the light faded, Zephyr was staring at her with undisguised awe. Blessed goddess, he breathed. Seraphina looked down at her paws. They glowed. Her entire body glowed with soft silver light. Her fur was white as fresh snow, and when she moved, trails of luminescence followed. She was larger than a normal wolf, more graceful, more other. And spreading from her shoulders were wings, not physical wings. Wings made of concentrated moonlight, translucent and ethereal, but somehow solid enough to feel real. A lunar wolf, the first in 300 years. Seraphina's mind reeled. She could feel the wings, sense them as extensions of herself, even though they defied logic. Zephyr shifted as well, his own transformations swift and practiced. His wolf was massive, midnight black with the same silver eyes. He patted closer, bowing his head in respect. Test them. His voice echoed in her mind through the pack link. See what you can do. Seraphina focused on the wings. Could they actually? She crouched and leaped. Instead of falling, she rose. The wings caught air that wasn't there, lifting her 10 feet, 20, 30 feet above the ground. The forest spread below her in moonlit magnificence. She was flying. A sound escaped her throat, not quite a howl, not quite a song. Something between. The notes rippled through the night, and everywhere they touched, plants bloomed. Birds woke and sang in response. The very air shimmered. "Come down before you're seen by the whole territory," Zephyr's amused voice counseled. Seraphina descended, landing with surprising grace. The wings folded against her back, but didn't disappear. Zephyr shifted back to human form. Seraphina followed instinctively, the transformation flowing as naturally as breathing. She stood naked in the moonlight, utterly unself-conscious, her skin still faintly glowing. Zephyr averted his eyes respectfully and produced a cloak from his saddlebag, draping it over her shoulders. "You are extraordinary," he said quietly. "And every alpha in 100 miles will soon know you exist." They returned to the clearing where Zephyr's guard waited. 12 elite warriors who'd seen battle and bloodshed, who'd served their king for decades. Every single one of them dropped to one knee when Seraphina approached. "My lady," their captain said, head bowed, "we are honored." Seraphina froze. "I'm not. You don't have to." "They do," Zephyr said gently. "You're a moon singer. In the old ways, that makes you royalty by birth. Higher than alphas. I second only to the goddess herself." The weight of those words settled on Seraphina's shoulders like a crown she hadn't asked for. One of the guards looked up, a woman with scarred cheeks and kind eyes. "My grandmother told me stories," she said, "of moon singers who could stop wars with a single word, who could heal the dying, who could make alphas remember mercy." Her voice roughened. "We thought they were just stories." "They weren't," Zephyr said. "And now one stands before you. Protect her as you would protect me, more than you would protect me." "Yes, sire." A commotion in the distance interrupted them. Voices raised, the sound of pack wolves approaching. Zephyr's expression hardened. "They've come, as I knew they would." "Who?" Seraphina asked, though she already knew. "Your former pack, to demand your return or to negotiate. And either way." He turned to her, silver eyes serious. "What happens next is your choice, Seraphina. Do we meet them, or do we leave?" Seraphina thought of Aldrich, of Thessaly, of Alpha Marius, who'd allowed her to be treated like trash for 18 years. "We meet them," she said, voice steady. "I want them to see what they rejected." Zephyr smiled, sharp and fierce. "As my lady commands." Alpha Marius led the delegation, 20 wolves including Aldrich, Thessaly, Beta Cormac, and Elder Moira. They stopped at the edge of the clearing, taking in the scene. The blooming flowers, the weeping oak, Zephyr Shadowwarn's guard. And at the center, Seraphina. She'd let the cloak fall open, revealing skin that still glowed faintly silver. Her hair moved in a wind that didn't exist. Her eyes were pure moonlight. She looked nothing like the cowering Omega they remembered. Alpha Marius's face paled. "What is this?" "This," Zephyr said, voice carrying across the space, "is what happens when you're too stupid to recognize a gift from the goddess." "That's Seraphina Night Whisper," Thessaly said, but her voice wavered. "Our pack Omega, she's mine now," Zephyr interrupted coldly. "You rejected her. I claim her. Under the old laws, that's final." Beta Cormac stepped forward. "Your Majesty, perhaps we can discuss—" "There's nothing to discuss. You threw away a moon singer. Your loss is my eternal gain." Shocked silence. "Moon singer," Alpha Marius finally managed. They're extinct. Did you not see the red moon? Did you not feel the earth shake when she awakened?" Elder Moira's voice cracked with something between grief and anger. I told you, I warned you, but you wouldn't listen. Aldrich was staring at Seraphina, his face ashen. That's impossible. She was defective. Her wolf never. Her wolf was dormant, Zephyr snarled, waiting for enough pain to crack her open. Pain you provided. He took a threatening step forward. You rejected your fated mate, a moon singer, the goddess's chosen. Do you understand what you've done? Aldrich's mouth opened and closed. No words came. Thessaly grabbed his arm possessively. She was rejected. That bond is broken. Aldrich chose me. Seraphina finally spoke, her voice carrying the weight of the first language, even though she spoke common tongue. He did, and I'm grateful. Everyone stared. You're grateful? Thessaly repeated incredulously. Yes. Seraphina stepped forward, and wolves instinctively moved back. Not because his rejection broke me open, shattered the cage I'd been living in, freed what was always meant to be free. She looked at Aldrich, really looked at him, and felt nothing. The bond was gone. The pain was transforming into something else, something powerful. You saw an Omega, she continued, something to use or discard. But I was never yours to reject, Aldrich Stormclaw. I belonged to the moon long before I belonged to any pack. She turned to Zephyr, whose eyes glowed with pride and something deeper. You said I could command anything in the first language. I did. Even an Alpha King? A slow smile curved Zephyr's lips. Even an Alpha King, if you dare. Seraphina took a breath, feeling the power coil in her chest. She spoke in the first language, her voice resonating with authority. Shadow-born at moonrise, kneel before me. Zephyr's eyes widened fractionally. Then, unable to resist the command woven in the first tongue, he sank to one knee. The gasps from both groups were audible. An Alpha King, kneeling before an Omega. But Seraphina wasn't done. She spoke again in the first language. Rise as my equal. Stand as my ally. Walk as my chosen king consort, if you will it. Zephyr rose, his eyes never leaving hers. You release me from the command and offer a choice instead, he murmured. Wise beyond your years, Moonsinger. Will you accept? There is nothing I want more. Zephyr's voice rang clear. I pledge myself to you, Silverheart that sings in darkness, not as your master, not as your alpha, but as your partner, your shield, your sword, your king, if you'll have me. He extended his hand. Seraphina took it, and power exploded between them again. But this time, it was intentional, balanced. Two ancient bloodlines recognizing each other. When the light faded, a silver mark had appeared on both their wrists, intertwined crescent moons. A mate bond. Not the crude, instinctive pull she'd felt with Aldrich. This was deeper, chosen, built on mutual respect and complementary power. Elder Moira began to weep. The old prophecy, a moonsinger and a shadow king united to restore balance. Alpha Marius found his voice. This is outrageous. She belongs to Crescent Ridge. She belongs to herself. Zephyr's roar shook the trees. And through her, she belongs to the moon. Your pack rejected her, cast her out. You have no claim. We didn't cast. You rejected a fated bond in public ceremony. Under pack law, she's free of your authority. Zephyr's eyes glowed dangerous silver. And if you're wise, you'll beg her forgiveness. Because a moonsinger can destroy a pack with a song. Seraphina raised a hand, stopping him. No, I don't want destruction. She looked at her former pack, at the faces that had watched her suffer, at Aldrich who'd broken her heart, at Thessaly who'd delighted in her humiliation. I want acknowledgement. Acknowledgement? Alpha Marius repeated warily. Yes. Seraphina's voice carried across the clearing. Acknowledge what you did, what you allowed. Acknowledge that pack laws are failing those they're meant to protect. She gestured to Elder Moira. She tried to warn you. How many times have the elders spoken of the old ways, only to be silenced by those who benefit from the current ones? Moira straightened, and strength flowing back into her aged frame. Omegas aren't weak, Seraphina continued. They're the caretakers, the peacekeepers, the ones who hold packs together through bonds of care rather than dominance. But you've twisted that into servitude. She looked at Aldrich. And you. You felt the bond, felt what the goddess intended, but you rejected it because it didn't fit your expectations. Aldrich flinched. I didn't know. You thought I was less than you. Seraphina's voice softened, but not with kindness, with pity. And maybe I was, as I was, but I'm not anymore. She turned to Zephyr. I need a crown. He smiled. Then you shall have one. Zephyr shifted partially, enough that his claws extended, black and sharp. He approached the ancient oak and spoke in the first language, asking permission. The tree responded, through one of its silver weeping branches bending low. Zephyr cut it carefully. The wood didn't bleed, it glowed. He shaped it with precise claw work, bending and weaving the living silver wood into a circlet. When finished, he presented it to Seraphina. A crown for a queen. Not of one pack, but of all who remember the old ways. Seraphina took it. The moment it touched her hands, flowers bloomed along its length, tiny night-blooming jasmine and moon lilies. She placed it on her head. Power surged. The red moon overhead pulsed once, twice, 3 times. Then slowly, it began to fade back to silver. The goddess had witnessed. The goddess approved. The transformation was complete. Seraphina stood crowned and claimed, a moon singer fully awakened, an alpha king at her side. Alpha Marius looked at her now with fear and calculation. What? What do you want from us? Change, Seraphina said simply. Reform. Start treating Omegas as equals. Listen to your elders. Remember that strength comes in forms other than fang and claw. And if we refuse? Seraphina's eyes flashed. I don't think you will, because every pack in 5 territories will hear about tonight. They'll hear how Crescent Ridge rejected a moonsinger, how the goddess turned the moon to blood in response, how your rejected Omega became a queen. She smiled without humor. Your reputation is already ruined. The only question is whether you become an example of what not to do, or pioneers of a better way. Beta Cormac stepped forward, dropping to one knee. I'll support reform. The old ways have been rotting for too long. Elder Moira knelt as well. As will I. One by one, others followed. Oh, not all. Thessaly remained standing, her face twisted with rage. Alpha Marius stood rigid, his pride warring with his sense. But enough knelt to matter. Aldrich was the last. He looked at Seraphina with something that might have been regret. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For what it's worth, I'm sorry I didn't see you. You saw what you were taught to see, Seraphina replied. But you have a choice now. Learn from this, or repeat it. She turned to Zephyr. I'm ready to leave. As my queen commands. They mounted horses brought by Zephyr's guard. As they prepared to depart, Seraphina looked back once at Crescent Ridge's delegation. They looked smaller now, diminished, and Seraphina felt free. 3 days later, Seraphina stood on the balcony of the northern palace, watching the sun set over Zephyr's kingdom. It was vast, territories stretching for hundreds of miles, dozens of packs sworn to Zephyr's banner, a capital city that housed thousands of wolves in harmony. And it was hers now, too. Overwhelming? Zephyr's voice came from behind her. Terrifying, Serafina admitted. 3 days ago, I was scrubbing floors. Now I'm supposedly queen of all this? He moved to stand beside her, his presence warm and solid. Not supposedly, you are. The packs have already begun arriving to pledge loyalty. To you. To us. He touched the mate mark on his wrist, and Serafina felt the echo of it on her own skin. You're not alone in this. A knock at the door interrupted them. Captain Reyna, head of Zephyr's guard, entered. Your Majesties, a delegation from Crescent Ridge requests entry. Serafina and Zephyr exchanged glances. Who leads it? Zephyr asked. Oh, Elder Moira and Beta Cormac. They carry a formal petition. Serafina's stomach tightened. Let them in. Minutes later, Moira and Cormac entered the throne room. Both looked exhausted, as if they'd ridden hard for days. They knelt immediately. My queen, my king, Moira said. We come with news. Rise, Serafina commanded, still getting used to the authority in her own voice. What news? Cormac stood, his face grim. Alpha Marius has been challenged by his own son. His son? Zephyr frowned. I wasn't aware Marius had a male heir. He didn't advertise it, Moira said quietly. The boy was born Omega. Marius's shame. Serafina's chest tightened. Another Omega child, hidden away. What's his name? Kieran Ironclaw. He's 15, and when the moon turned red, something awakened in him too. Zephyr's eyes widened. Beat another moon singer? No, but power nonetheless. The ability to see truth, to speak it in a way that cannot be denied. Moira's expression was troubled. He challenged his father publicly 3 nights ago, declared that Marius had violated sacred trust by rejecting the Moonsinger's warning. And? Serafina prompted. And Marius struck him, in front of the entire pack. Cormac's voice shook with barely controlled rage. Tried to beat him into submission. The boy didn't fight back, Moira continued. He simply spoke truth. Every corrupt act Marius had committed, every Omega abused, every elder ignored, every law bent to serve his ego. Serafina felt sick. Is Kieran alive? Barely. We got him to the healers, but the pack has split. Half support Marius, half support reform. It's chaos. Zephyr's jaw clenched. Marius will use this. Consolidate power by eliminating opposition. He's already trying, Cormac confirmed. He's called for a pack judgment tomorrow night. Kieran will be tried for treason. If found guilty, he'll be executed, Serafina finished, cold dread settling in her stomach. Moira looked at her with desperate hope. We came to beg intervention. You're a moonsinger. The goddess is chosen. If you declared protection, it would start a war, Zephyr said flatly. Marius would see it as an invasion. Then let there be war, Serafina said quietly. Everyone turned to stare at her. You can't be serious, Zephyr said carefully. War between packs. Would be over in a night if I'm there, Serafina interrupted. You said moonsingers could stop wars with a word. Let me try. It's dangerous. So is letting a child die because I'm afraid. Serafina met his eyes. I won't be another leader who allows Omegas to suffer because it's convenient. Pride and concern warred on Zephyr's face. Finally, he nodded. Then we ride at dawn, with the full royal guard. By dawn, Serafina stood at the head of a force of 100 wolves, Zephyr's elite warriors, seasoned and deadly. She wore armor that had belonged to Zephyr's mother, silver plates etched with moonlight runes, a cloak that seemed woven from starlight itself, and on her head, the crown of living wood and flowers. They reached Crescent Ridge by midday. The pack was gathered in the ceremonial clearing, the same place Serafina had been rejected. Kieran knelt at the center, bound and bleeding. Marius stood over him, triumphant. Thessaly stood at Marius's side, her expression vicious. "The boy has confessed to sedition," Marius was saying, "to spreading lies about his alpha. The punishment is, release him." Seraphina's voice cut across the clearing like a blade. The pack turned as one. Shock rippled through the crowd. Seraphina strode forward, Zephyr at her side, their guard fanning out behind them. "This judgment is unlawful," Seraphina declared, "and I will not permit it." Marius's face purpled. "You have no authority here." "I have every authority. I am a moonsinger. I speak for the goddess herself." Seraphina's eyes glowed silver. "And I say this child is under my protection." Thessaly laughed, shrill and mocking. "You're nothing. You're still just a rejected Omega plane dress-up." Seraphina turned to her. For a moment, and something almost like pity crossed her face. Then she spoke in the first language. Silence. Thessaly's mouth snapped shut. She tried to speak. Her lips moved, her throat worked, but no sound emerged. Terror flooded her eyes. "You'll have your voice back when you learn to use it with kindness," Seraphina said calmly. "Until then, feel what it's like to be silenced." She moved past the stunned girl to where Kieran knelt. The boy looked up at her with eyes too old for his age, filled with pain and hope. Seraphina touched his bonds. They dissolved at her command. "Stand, Kieran Ironclaw. You've earned it." The boy stood on shaking legs. Seraphina steadied him, and as their skin touched, she felt it. A spark of power similar to her own, but different. Truth-speaking, reality compelling. "You're awakening," she whispered. I don't understand it," Kieran said hoarsely. "You will. I'll teach you." She turned to face Marius. "This ends now. You can't just... I can. I am. Your reign is over, Marius Ironclaw." Elder Moira stepped forward from the crowd. "There's precedent, the Luna prophecy." Murmurs rippled through the pack. "The Luna prophecy is myth," Marius snarled. "Is it?" Moira's voice rang clear. "When a moonsinger awakens and claims a child of truth, when the moon bleeds red and old power stirs, the prophecy says a new order will rise." She pulled an ancient scroll from her robes, yellowed with age. "I've kept this hidden for 40 years, waiting for the signs." Her hands trembled as she unrolled it. It says, "When the silenced find voice and the broken bloom silver, when Alpha kneels before Omega's power, the old Luna rises and the false throne falls." Seraphina's breath caught. I'm not a Luna, Luna doesn't mean mate anymore," Moira interrupted gently. "The original word meant voice of the moon. That's what moonsingers were, the true Lunas." Understanding dawned. Seraphina looked at the pack, at faces filled with fear and hope and uncertainty. "Is this what you want?" she asked them. "True change? Or do you want things to stay as they are?" For a long moment, no one spoke. Then a small voice from the back. "I vote for change." An Omega. Young, maybe 16, with scars on her arms that told stories of abuse. Another voice joined. "Change. Change. Change." The word spread through the crowd like wildfire. Omegas first, then betas, then even some alphas. Marius watched his power crumble. His rage and disbelief warring on his face. "This is treason. All of you." "No." Zephyr's voice cut through the chaos. "This is evolution, and you can either accept it or step down." "I won't." Seraphina raised her hand. The crowd fell silent. "Marius Ironclaw, you have two choices. Abdicate peacefully and live out your days in quiet retirement. Or resist and face judgment for every Omega you've harmed, every elder you've silenced, every law you've broken." Marius's eyes darted around, looking for support, finding none. You can't prove. I don't need to. Serafina gestured to Kieran. He can. Truth speakers don't lie, Marius. Every accusation he made is verifiable fact. The former alpha deflated. Without his pack's support, without his authority, he was just an old wolf facing the consequences of decades of cruelty. I abdicate, he said finally, the words bitter in his mouth. Cheers erupted from half the crowd. The other half looked uncertain. Moira stepped forward. Then, by the old laws and the new prophecy, I present Serafina Night Whisper, Moonsinger and True Luna, as alpha of Crescent Ridge Pack until a worthy successor is chosen. Wait, Serafina started, but the pack was already kneeling. Even those who'd tormented her, who'd treated her as less than nothing, they knelt before their new alpha, before the Omega who'd become their queen. Serafina stood frozen, the weight of what had just happened crushing down on her. She was alpha of Crescent Ridge. Zephyr moved to her side, his presence grounding. You don't have to accept this. Yes, I do. Serafina's voice was quiet but certain. Because if I don't, nothing changes. As someone like Marius will rise again. She looked at the kneeling pack, her pack now, and felt something shift inside her. This was what Moonsingers were meant for. Not domination, restoration, rebuilding. Rise, she commanded in the first language, and they obeyed. Serafina took a breath and addressed them. I accept the role of alpha, but things will be different. Her voice carried across the clearing. From this day forward, Crescent Ridge operates under new laws. Omegas are equals. Elders are honored. Strength is measured not by dominance, but by service to the pack. She gestured to the bound and gagged Thessaly. Those who abused power will face consequences, but also redemption if they choose it. She released the silence command. Thessaly Goldmane, do you accept these new terms? Thessaly gasped as her voice returned. For a moment, hatred blazed in her eyes. Then she looked around at the pack who'd once loved her, seeing only disappointment and wariness now. I accept, she said hoarsely. Then you'll serve the pack as I once did, scrubbing floors, preparing meals, learning what it means to be truly Omega. Serafina's voice softened slightly. But you'll do it knowing you can rise again, through effort, through change, through choosing better. She turned to find Aldrich in the crowd. He was staring at her with something that might have been wonder or regret. Aldrich Stormclaw, you rejected a fated bond. That was your right. Do you accept the new order? I do, Aldrich said immediately. And I ask forgiveness for my blindness. Asked and granted. Serve well and you'll find your place. Serafina looked at Kieran, still standing beside her, young and brave and powerful in ways he didn't yet understand. You'll be my second, my truth speaker. Together we'll rebuild this pack properly. The boy's eyes filled with tears. I won't let you down. I know. As the sun set on that impossible day, Serafina stood between two worlds, Zephyr's kingdom to the north, Crescent Ridge to the south, a bridge between old ways and new. And above them all, the moon rose silver and approving, watching her daughter claim what had always been hers. Power, purpose, peace. Word of Serafina's rise spread like wildfire. Within weeks, packs across the territories were debating the implications. Some celebrated, others feared, and a few plotted. The most dangerous was Ragnar Bloodstone, alpha of the Eastern Wastes. He was ancient and powerful, ruling through fear and brutal enforcement of the old hierarchies. To him, a moonsinger, An Omega, claiming alpha status was blasphemy. He arrived at Crescent Ridge with 50 warriors at his back, demanding an audience. Seraphina received him in the Great Hall, Zephyr at her right hand, Kieran at her left. Ragnar was massive, 8 feet tall in human form, scarred and weathered, his eyes cold as winter ice. "So," he rumbled, looking Seraphina up and down with open contempt. "The Omega who thinks she's a queen." "The Moonsinger who is a queen," Seraphina corrected calmly. "State your business, Ragnar Bloodstone." "My business is simple. Surrender your claim to Crescent Ridge. Return to your proper place, and I'll let you live as my pack Omega." Zephyr snarled. Kieran's hands clenched, but Seraphina remained still. "And if I refuse? Then I challenge you for the pack, by combat, as is my right under the old laws." Murmurs rippled through the hall. Combat challenges were sacred and binding. Seraphina smiled softly. "I accept your challenge." The combat circle was drawn at dawn. Ragnar shifted into his massive wolf form, a beast of rust-red fur and scars, twice the size of a normal alpha. Seraphina shifted as well, her lunar wolf form emerging in a cascade of silver light. The contrast was stark. Ragnar was bulk and brutality. Seraphina was grace and luminescence. He laughed, a sound like grinding stones. "You think pretty lights will save you, Omega? I think you've forgotten what Moonsingers can do," Seraphina replied, her mental voice calm. Ragnar lunged. He was fast for his size, claws extended, jaws wide. He aimed to end this in seconds. Seraphina spoke in the first language. One word. "Stop!" Ragnar froze mid-leap, not stopped by will, not held by force. Simply frozen. Suspended in air, unable to move, unable to even breathe beyond what his body required to survive. Gasps echoed around the circle. Seraphina padded forward until she stood directly beneath him. "You came here expecting an Omega, expecting weakness, expecting submission." Her voice resonated with power. "But I am not what you expected. I am what you feared." She circled him slowly. "Moonsingers don't fight with fang and claw. We fight with truth, with reality, with the first language that shapes the world." Ragnar's eyes bulged with impotent rage. "And the truth is this: your time is over. But the age of alphas ruling through terror ends today." Seraphina looked at the gathered witnesses, wolves from a dozen packs who'd come to watch what they thought would be her execution. "Let this be a lesson. Challenge a Moonsinger, and you challenge creation itself." She could have killed him. One word in the first language and Ragnar's heart would stop. His breath would cease. His body would simply end. The power sang through her, offering the option. But Seraphina remembered what Zephyr had said. Power comes with consequences. "I release you," she said instead. "Return to your territory. Reform your pack. Learn that strength without mercy is just cruelty, and cruelty will no longer be tolerated." She spoke the command to unfreeze him. Ragnar dropped to the ground, gasping. He shifted to human form, his massive frame trembling. And for the first time in his long life, Ragnar Bloodstone felt fear. He looked up at Seraphina, and in his eyes, she saw understanding dawn. "You could have killed me." "Yes. Why didn't you?" "Because death doesn't teach, it just removes." Seraphina shifted to human form as well, standing before him without armor or weapon, just herself. "I want change, Ragnar. Real change. And that requires even old wolves learning new tricks." Something shifted in his expression. Respect, perhaps. Or the beginning of it. "You're either the wisest alpha I've ever met or the most foolish." "Maybe both." Seraphina extended her hand. "Will you accept peace? Will you reform?" Ragnar stared at her offered hand for a long moment. Then slowly he took it. I'll try. The old ways are hard to break, but I'll try. That's all I ask. As Ragnar and his warriors departed, heads bowed in submission rather than defeat, Kieran approached Serafina. You showed him mercy. I showed him a better way. Whether he takes it is his choice. And if he doesn't? Serafina's eyes glowed silver. The next time, I won't be so kind. That night, representatives from 7 territories gathered in Zephyr's throne room. Word had spread. The Moonsinger had defeated Ragnar Bloodstone without spilling blood. She'd claimed an Alpha pack as an Omega. She'd united the Northern King with the reformers of Crescent Ridge. They came seeking answers, seeking guidance, seeking a new way forward. Serafina stood before them, crowned and powerful, but also accessible. She didn't stand above them. She stood among them. The old hierarchies are broken, she said, on her voice carrying to every corner of the vast hall. They served their purpose once, but they've become corrupt, twisted into tools of oppression rather than order. She gestured to the assembled leaders, alphas and betas, elders and warriors, omegas and lone wolves. I propose a new structure, the 7 Territory Alliance. Murmurs of interest. Each territory maintains its sovereignty, its traditions, its leadership, but we unite under common laws. Laws that protect all wolves, regardless of designation. Laws that honor strength in all its forms, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. An alpha from the western reaches spoke up. And who enforces these laws? A council. 7 representatives, 1 from each territory. Rotating leadership, checks and balances. And you? Another asked. What role do you play? Serafina smiled. I'm a Moonsinger. My role is to remember, to preserve the old wisdom while embracing new growth, to mediate when conflicts arise, to teach those who awaken with power they don't understand. She looked at Kieran, standing proudly at her side. And to raise up the next generation of truth speakers, healers, and leaders who will carry this work forward when I'm gone. Zephyr stepped forward. The Northern Territories support this alliance, fully. One by one, the other territories pledged their support. Not all. Some leaders left angry, vowing to maintain the old ways. But enough agreed to matter. A new era was beginning. 3 months later, Serafina stood on the same balcony where this journey had truly begun. But everything was different now. The Crescent Ridge thrived under new leadership. Kieran had proven himself a wise and compassionate second, and the pack was healing. The 7 Territory Alliance was finding its rhythm, stumbling sometimes, but growing stronger. Zephyr approached, wrapping an arm around her waist. The mate bond between them pulsed warm and constant. Regrets? He asked softly. None? You? Only that I didn't find you sooner. Serafina leaned into him, feeling the weight of her crown, but also the strength to carry it. Sometimes I still can't believe this is real, that I went from scrubbing floors to being the most powerful wolf in 7 territories, to being seen. She turned to face him. That's what matters most, being truly seen. Zephyr kissed her forehead. I see you. I'll always see you. The moon rose full and silver overhead, and Serafina felt its approval like a warm embrace. She'd been rejected, broken, cast aside, and from those ashes, she'd risen as something the world had never expected, not despite being an Omega. Because of it, that night, Serafina did what she'd done every night since her awakening. She sang, not commands, not magic, just a song of gratitude and hope, her voice rising into the darkness. And across 7 territories, wolves paused to listen. Omegas who'd been silenced found their voices. Alphas who'd ruled through fear learned mercy. Elders who'd been ignored were finally heard. The old ways weren't destroyed. They were transformed. And in a small den at the edge of Crescent Ridge, a young Omega pup opened her eyes for the first time. They glowed silver. Another moon singer. Awakening. The cycle continued. The song would never end. 5 years after the harvest moon turned red, the world had changed. The 7-territory alliance had grown to 12. Reform spread like wildfire, not just in wolf packs, but in other shifter communities who'd heard the story of the rejected Omega who became a queen. Seraphina and Zephyr ruled from the northern palace, but they traveled constantly, mediating disputes, teaching young moonsingers, 3 more had awakened, and ensuring the new laws took root. Crescent Ridge had become a model of the new way. Kieran led as Alpha, his truth-speaking gift ensuring transparency and justice. Omegas served on the council alongside Alphas. Elders were consulted on all major decisions. Even Thessaly had changed. After years of service and reflection, she'd become an advocate for Omega rights, using her influence to help rather than harm. Nee Aldrich served as Beta, loyal and steady, the ghost of his rejection a distant memory. Ragnar Bloodstone had kept his word. The Eastern Wastes weren't perfect, but they were better. He'd implemented reforms, albeit slowly, and while he'd never fully embraced the new ways, he'd stopped actively fighting them. Marius lived in quiet exile, tending a garden on the edge of Packlands, a small, bitter man who'd lost everything and learned nothing. And the bond Seraphina once thought would destroy her? It had transformed into something better. Her connection with Zephyr was deeper than any fated bond could be because it was chosen, built, earned. On this particular evening, Seraphina stood in the royal nursery holding her daughter. Silver hair, silver eyes, born under a full moon, already humming melodies no one had taught her. On another moon singer. Zephyr entered quietly, his own silver-marked arms ready to hold their child. She was singing again, Seraphina said softly. The flowers in her room are blooming. Just like her mother. Seraphina smiled, placing their daughter in Zephyr's arms. I was thinking about that night. The harvest moon. The rejection. What about it? I used to think it was the worst thing that ever happened to me. She watched their daughter yawn, tiny and perfect and powerful. Now I wonder if it was the best, because it broke me open. Let me become this. Zephyr kissed the top of their daughter's head, then Seraphina's. The goddess works in mysterious ways. That she does. A knock at the door. Kieran entered, followed by a young Omega girl, maybe 13, with silver just beginning to show at the roots of her dark hair. My queen, Kieran said formally, though his eyes were warm. We have another. The girl looked terrified and hopeful, clutching a tattered bag. Seraphina recognized that look. She'd worn it herself once. What's your name? Seraphina asked gently. Lyra Nightshade. My pack says I'm defective. My wolf won't shift right. I sing in my sleep and things happen. They want to cast me out, but Elder Moira said you might. I will. Seraphina crossed to the girl, placing gentle hands on her shoulders. You're not defective, Lyra. You're awakening, and I'll teach you everything you need to know. The girl's eyes filled with tears. Really? Really? You're safe now. You're seen. You're home. As Seraphina led the newest moonsinger toward the training rooms where she'd learn what she was, where she'd discover her power, where she'd become who she was always meant to be. The moon rose full and proud. And somewhere in the night, a song began. It would echo across territories and time, a reminder that power comes in unexpected forms, that strength grows from pain, and that sometimes being rejected is the first step toward being reborn. The song continued. And it always would.